No, I mean as in...
And we are back to the Intel TechLounge over here at the Intel booth in Hall 3. Mobile World Congress 2015 is still going strong. Third day for the Mobile World Congress, second day for us. And we are almost about to wrap it up with the next session. Before this, we have Paul Fischer from Intel, technical evangelist. I kind of
fancy title.
It is. So what does a technical evangelist do at Intel?
Well, I'm a technical evangelist and technical marketing engineer.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to think of technical marketing as I get to think about it, talk about it, write about it, but I don't have to actually do it. So it's a nice job. But it means that I'm out there spreading the word about whatever I'm associated. And today that's the Intel XDK HTML5 mobile app development tool.
Okay, so I mean that's a good thing. You can inspire people.
I try to.
Yeah. Well, that's what evangelists have to do.
That's what we that's what we try to do.
And then you can see what's coming out.
And give them reasons for checking it out and going taking the risk and going down that path. So,
talking about HTML5, what sometimes I always had the feeling. Whenever people were making predictions by the end of the year, these forecasts that you see on all these technical publications. You have to talk about three things. First of all, email is dead, the PC is dead, and four things. Next year will be the breakthrough year of NFC, and next year will be the breakthrough year of HTML5. You can't go wrong with this. That's what we saw in the last 5 years.
Yeah, well, probably people are still asking.
Yeah.
In fact, I've spent quite a bit of time in, we have another booth. I don't know if you're
Hall
aware.
8.1, software group.
Yeah, and so that's where I've been hanging out.
Yeah.
And doing a little evangelizing, talking directly to developers there. And a lot of them come up and say, "What's this? Is HTML5 ready yet?" Well, it's always been ready. It's really, I think, a matter of understanding how to use it in this context. And so I think that's what's really been missing is people think, well, it's just a web page or a web app in this other form. It's not really. It's an app. So I need to take a different approach to it. I need to think about it differently. It's a different environment. I'm not on a desktop PC that's got oodles of RAM and oodles of resources and I can get away with anything. I got to be a little bit more conservative and conscious of the fact that I'm running on a battery. I can't just be doing everything anywhere, anytime, all the time. I got a good app sits on its thumbs most of the time, waiting for something to happen. Because otherwise, you're wasting battery, wasting CPU. You're destroying your user's data plan by sucking down too much data. So you have to think about things differently. You do have to construct it like an app. So.
Back in the days, I had this dream of HTML5 to turn the most important app into the universal app on the web and on mobile device, which is the browser.
Yes.
And I think you can do pretty much everything in the browser. And but then app stores became so popular, and I think somehow HTML5 kind of lost a little bit of momentum to this. Yeah,
and I don't think you should consider that HTML5 is competing with those methods. In fact, we're really talking about HTML5 hybrid apps. So there's a native component to every one of these apps. These are installable apps in general. Well, there's two ways to do it. One we call a packaged app, and one is a hosted app. So a hosted app might look like an icon that's got some cached files, but in fact it's being provided via a website. So I've got a URL I have to go to. I can sneak that URL later on, but I'm still getting all my information off of a website. Whereas a packaged app is an independent entity. So it's like any other app. It's just that what we've used is we're using technology. We're using HTML5 technology to create an app that still runs as an independent entity. It doesn't need a website to run. It can come up independently, but it probably has services that it's going to call through the net and so forth. And so I like to think of HTML5 apps as a way for those who either are uncomfortable or don't want to work in native land. It's an alternative way to build an app. And so it's a way to get web developers and others who are familiar with HTML5, give them an opportunity to write apps as well, which a lot of them are being asked to do.
One of the biggest challenges for a developer in these days, or especially when you're still living this dream of this coffee house developer, just sitting in a Starbucks, creating something super viral and successful, right? I know those days are over.
Yeah.
When you look at how the market shares are between software houses
and just the number of apps out there. Yeah.
And plus, when you're uploading an app in these days,
how do you even
one
get?
day you have 1 million competitors.
Yeah, yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah.
But the challenges for a developer in these days, especially when they want to develop for iOS, Windows Phone, and Android, is of course the compatibility, the look and feel of an app. That's going to be the same on all the different platforms. But I think HTML5 and what you can provide over here is kind of helping to bridge these gaps in between different operating systems, but still we have some challenges.
Oh, definitely. It's not just build HTML5 and it works everywhere. They're just like the differences between browsers, there are differences between platforms. So you have to make accommodation for that. And the argument about should I have the look and feel of an Android app or should I have a look and feel of my brand, that's almost a religious argument. So I don't want to say there's a right or wrong, but your app should look like what your app needs to do first. You might have certain conventions you want to follow that are appropriate for iOS or appropriate for Android, but I don't think you need to look like, oh my God, that's an Android app or that's an iOS app. You need to look like your app and what your product needs. The HTML5, as you mentioned, it's really useful across a variety of platforms. It does allow a small developer to support a wider range of platforms. With some effort, but it can be done, and that is his real value. And so I think where that comes out is not necessarily every developer who's out there. Like let's say that I want to create a game, and I just want a tiny percentage of the Android market around the world. Well, you might as well just concentrate on doing it in Android, do it in Java, doing it natively, because you just care about that big market. But if I'm a bank or I'm an enterprise with a lot of 10,000 employees, I can't say I'm only going to concentrate on Android because I might have 10, 15, 20% of my population that's got other devices. So that's a scenario where I think where a particular segment or market type deserves to be in HTML5 rather than native, because we're serving a diverse group as opposed to I just want some chunk of this market. So it's a segment as opposed to a market, if you will. And I think that's where the HTML5 really shines.
We're talking about tools that I can use as an app developer for mobile platforms. Do you have any recommendations? Do you have anything that you would say, these are the best tools that are actually out there and those are the ones you should focus on?
Well, obviously I have to put a plug in for the Intel XDK. But there are, and I like to say that tool is designed to be complementary with other tools. So it's not meant to be a one-stop shop. It's really meant to be a complement. So if you've got a tool that really helps you do layout, like for example, you like to use Bootstrap for your layout and so forth, you should use that. If you've got certain libraries that help you do touch and swipe, use those libraries. Find the ones that suit the job best. Find the ones that do it efficiently and with the lowest amount of memory and CPU, and use those libraries, use those tools. There are some really good test tools out there. Use the test tools. So we're not trying to prevent you from using the tool that works best for the job. We're trying to enhance the process. We're trying to make that process easier. One of the things that's really hard to do with a hybrid HTML5 app is debug it. Once you've got it packaged up, it's really hard to get in there and know what's going wrong on this, XYZ Android device.
Right.
And so we've put together a collection of tools that make that process much, much easier without requiring that you structure your app according to this guideline or using these libraries. We're trying to be very agnostic with regard to those and just simply enhance the process.
So You've been already mentioning, the debugging process.
Yes.
Especially when you're developing for Android.
Especially for Android, yes.
But you know what? Sometimes, I especially did it during a keynote at DroidCon, like 3 or 4 years ago. I said, "Stop whining." Yeah, if you want to whine about fragmentation on Android, I would love to get you in touch with a desktop app developer that needs to run on like a gazillion of different combinations of hardware.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes it's a little bit exaggerated what's happening in here, especially. Well, okay, it depends. It might be a little bit different for game developers, right? And especially different resolutions, right?
Yes,
And Android in terms of the update cycles, right? It's just constantly adding new features and new features and new features. And when we look at Windows, right, there's a new Windows coming out like every 3 or 4 years. So, of course, this is much more dynamic on a mobile platform. How can I make sure that I debug more efficient? Are there any tools out there that you can recommend that are any workflows?
Well, it's pretty fundamental. The best debugging I found is the mental debugging. Think about what's happening or what should be happening and what could be going wrong without even looking at the code. You know what that code is, and think about, step back from it and try to think in your mind, do mental experiments first, so that you at least get an idea as to where something might be wrong. For some people that works. It works well for me. I don't know if it works well for others. And then there's always, the equivalent to printf is console.log on, so that's an extremely useful tool. A lot of people poo-poo it, but it's a very, very useful thing to use. There are some software contexts it's not going to work very well. But the tool that most people are familiar with, if they come from HTML5 development, is going to be the in Chrome, it's the Chrome Dev Tools. Safari, it's Web Inspector. Firebug on Firefox, and all of them very much the same. It's a panel or a collection of panels that have inspection of source, ability to modify a few things on the fly and kind of see what they change. Because since it's a scripted environment, it's easy to just test things out, play around with things, see how they change, and get a sense, for whether or not that's my problem. And that's actually the part that we've tried to improve upon, not replacing that, but just making it accessible. So when you're dealing with this captive app that's in web technology, but it's built into a container that's on the phone, you typically haven't been able to get at that with that tool. So we've come up with some ways to make that more accessible, including being able to, so on Android devices, you've been able to do that with 4.4 devices. Well, we are actually able to make it go down to 4.0 devices. And on iOS, you can only do that with a Mac. Well, it turns out there's a way to do it with Windows and Linux as well. So we've made that accessible. So it's more about just making people aware of these pieces they want to use, that they're used to using on the desktop, and making it possible to get them in front of those tools more easily and more quickly when you're dealing with a phone or a tablet. So they're actually debugging on a real device.
When I'm looking at how competitive the app market, the app markets became, and in general this whole infrastructure and ecosystem, from idea to App Store, right? And especially to kind of make an idea happen, to really turn it into an app, to design this app, and to this time to market for an app developer can be very, very crucial in these days.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
This changed because there are not so many kind of niche markets left.
No, there's not. I think one place people should look is what are they really passionate about, and build an app for yourself. And you're bound to find others, who want that same thing, who have been looking for that same solution. So I think that's one place to start, especially if you're thinking about an app that's not necessarily, that's my app, as opposed to an app that I do for, the bank that I work for, or something like that. A lot of apps, I think successful apps, are extensions of other products or services. And so it's not necessarily the one guy or one gal who stands alone, but rather who's part of some organization and who's offering some sort of a product. And so the app becomes an extension of that. So you're not necessarily making money off the app, but rather it's a marketing tool. I've even seen some folks talk about how the app became a marketing tool for them. So they make a little bit of money off of it, but really not much, maybe a few $1,000s a year. But what it's done is it's given them credibility, and they're able to now hire themselves out as somebody who knows how to write apps for people who really need an app that's part of some other service or something like that. So, there's lots of ways to look at an app. So for some people, it's just a personal satisfaction that they just want to do this and they want to get it out there. But I think part of that comes down to they want to prove that they can do it.
I think it's one of the smartest recommendations and statements ever that you just made. We're saying, just create an app for yourself.
Yeah.
Create the app that you would love to use on a daily basis. Because if it's not getting successful, at least you have this amazing app for yourself.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And you're still
it's one you've been
love
looking for, and you can't find. Well, just
you're
put
still
one
gonna
together
love
yourself.
it. It's all about the passion of it.
Yes.
And code can be kind of poetry in general. You are creative, right? You're creating something.
Yes.
There's so many people out there that are constantly just criticizing other people's work, and then there are those guys that are creators and just showing something, bringing something into public.
Do it and satisfy yourself. Yes.
I so love that idea.
Yeah.
If I'm an app developer, where can I find everything that I need to know about the App Developer Zone from Intel, about your SDK and whatnot?
The App Developer Zone is software.intel.com. Very easy to find. I apologize ahead of time that the Intel website is massive and it's sometimes hard to find stuff there.
They have a search engine for the backend.
And the Intel XDK can be found at xdk.intel.com. And we've tried to make sure that all our URLs for docs and so forth have /xdk in them, so that makes it a little easier to find those needles from that giant haystack. But yeah, xdk.intel.com is the easiest place to find it.
sdk.intel.com, software.intel.com. If you're an app developer, just look out for this website. Paul Fischer, thank you so much for introducing this to us. And we're going to have a break for like some 5 minutes. And then we're going to talk about cars and automotive. And I'm glad to talk to Ford again. And they also have an app program and all of this. Kind of interesting. So I see you back soon.
Thank you very much.